I was tightening the final screw on my new front door lock when I heard a shrill yell coming from behind me. "You can't do that. I run this neighborhood." The tone was shrill and angry, ringing down the otherwise quiet street. I slowly turned around, still grasping my screwdriver, attempting to remain calm. "Ma'am, I'm just replacing my own locks," I said. But she was already striding across my porch, heels clicking as if she owned the home. "This house is under HOA oversight," she barked, waving a clipboard like it was a badge. "You're not meeting our property standards." I fought not to laugh. "Our standards?" I replied softly. "Last I knew, I paid cash for this house. There's no HOA here." She didn't care. She snatched her phone out of her purse and began punching in numbers. "You'll regret it," she snapped. "I'm calling 911. You can't just break in and change locks on me." I knew just what kind of woman she was: entitled, controlling, accustomed to everyone else giving in. But this time, she chose the wrong guy. In a matter of minutes, a police car pulled up. She ran to them as if she were the heroine in the book, gesturing towards me as if I had invaded my own house. "That man's trespassing. He broke in," she yelled. The officer frowned, looking at me, then at the lock on the door. "Sir, could you tell us what's going on here?" Before I got a word out, she interrupted me again, cutting me short. "He's lying. This is my neighborhood. We have rules." I breathed deeply, retrieved a crumpled paper from my pocket, and offered it to the officer. "That's the deed," I said steadily. "My name's right there." Her face hesitated for a split second before she grinned hard. "That paper doesn't count for anything," she stated bitterly. "You'll see. I have contacts." The cop looked uneasy, and I could tell this wasn't the end. Not by a long shot. The next morning, I stepped outside to grab the mail and froze. A bright orange sticker was plastered across my front door. HOA violation. Immediate action required. Except there was no HOA. I had double-checked that before I even bought the place. Outside, she stood drinking coffee, her smug grin etched across her face. "Told you," she called out loudly, to make sure all the neighbors heard. "This neighborhood does what I say." I ripped the bogus notice off and headed towards her. "You fabricated this," I said lowly. "You don't control anything here." Her grin didn't waver. "Oh, I think so," she said easily, tilting her glass back again. "And you'll soon discover." By lunchtime, there were 2 uniformed men at my front door. They each had badges pinned to their uniforms, radios strapped to their shoulders, looked official enough to deceive anyone. "Sir, we've had reports you're squatting on this property illegally," one of them said sternly. I blinked. "Illegally? I own the house." The shorter one folded his arms. "Ma'am over there," he said, pointing toward her, "is the HOA president. She states this property wasn't approved for sale." I glanced at their uniforms once more. No department badges, no nameplates, and the so-called police car they were behind didn't even have a license plate. My stomach clenched. "You two have IDs?" I asked. One of them blanched, then growled, "You're hindering an investigation, sir." And that was when I realized they weren't actual police officers. I slipped my hand into my pocket as if to get my wallet, but actually pressed the record button on my phone. "You may want to consider this," I said placidly, "because impersonating a police officer, that's a federal offense." Her face whitened for an instant before she screamed, "Get him out of here." A step forward by one of the imposter cops, hand on his pretend badge, when a deep voice boomed from behind me. "That won't be necessary." I spun around and spotted genuine squad cars arriving. Lights flashing. The grin faded on the woman's face in an instant. 2 actual officers emerged, their authentic badges glinting in the sunlight. "We received a report of trespassing," one of them said. Before I could answer, she interrupted, voice heavy with insincere concern. "Yes, that guy's squatting in my area. Those 2 officers were assisting me to evict him." The actual cop scowled. "Those officers?" he asked again, gazing at the imposters. "Which department are you with, gentlemen?" The fakes froze. "Private security," one muttered weakly, but it was too late. The tone in the officer's voice said he wasn't buying it. Within minutes, they were both in handcuffs. The woman stood frozen, her plan collapsing right in front of her. Then she whispered, You have no idea who you're dealing with." She turned and stormed off before the cops could stop her. One of the officers gestured toward me and whispered, "You should keep those cameras of yours rolling. I think you're going to be seeing more of this." That evening, I did not sleep. Any noise outside would make me sit bolt upright. At midnight, I reviewed my security cameras and froze in terror. There she was, whispering with two men beside my fence, holding a flashlight. They put a sign directly on the border of my property. When I got closer, my gut fell. It said property under HOA investigation, entry restricted. That was no longer just harassment. That was trespassing and vandalism. I reported it to the sheriff's department and waited at the window. 15 minutes later, a patrol car came by. The same officer from earlier got out. "You again?" he said, smiling half-heartedly. "Yeah," I said. "You're going to want to see this." We strolled to the fence, the phony sign still in place, fresh paint running down the sides. He allowed a sigh. She really doesn't give up, does she? But by the time he could get pictures, headlights lit up and her SUV roared off into the night. "She's dancing on the edge," the officer explained. "One more prank like that, and it's criminal harassment." After he left, I stood there by myself in the stillness, looking at that phony sign. Something about her arrogance did not feel right. That confidence, that arrogance that she'd get away with it, it did not just come out of the air. She was not some furious neighbor. She had assistance. Contact. Perhaps even someone giving her information from within the system. And if that was the case, then the actual fight was about to begin. The next morning, I headed directly to the county office to look at the property records myself. The clerk, a bespectacled older man, entered my address into the computer. After a moment or two, his brow creased. "That's odd," he said. "There's a duplicate listing here, another ownership record under something called Green Meadows HOA. My stomach dropped. "But that HOA doesn't exist," I insisted. No listing, no registration, nothing was there. I glared at the screen as the clerk scowled. "You're right," he said deliberately. "The file is phony, but whoever posted it accessed an internal system. That means there was someone on the inside assisting them." My anger began to simmer in my chest. "So, she falsified property information?" He nodded. "Appears so, but I can't erase it on my own authority level. You'll have to get someone above me." I headed out of the office, then caught sight of a black SUV double parked on the street across from me. Engine idling. Tinted windows. I braked. The window slid down just enough for me to catch a glimpse of her inside, smiling. "Digging around, are we?" she shouted, her voice silky but menacing. "You think forms and paperwork are going to keep you safe?" I said it before. I told you I am the one who runs here. I moved to the curb, looking her in the eye. "You forged documents, Karen. That's not maintaining a neighborhood. That's illegal." She laughed again. "Illegal?" "No, darling. It's called connections. You'll be out of that house by the end of the week." And she took off, tires blazing, a cloud of dust in her wake. I was standing there, brain whirling. I couldn't take on the usual battle, not if she had an inside man. But I had something she didn't. The bogus cops, the sign, the threats all on tape. Every second recorded, backed up, and stored away in the cloud. She believed she had the system in her pocket, but she didn't realize I was simultaneously constructing a case of my own. 2 days after that, I received a letter stuck to my front door. No envelope, no postage, just one plain sheet of paper with this on it. Final notice. Vacate premises or face legal action. The bottom featured that same forged HOA logo. I could almost hear her condescending voice saying, "See, told you I run this place." She had no idea that I'd already forwarded all the footage to a friend, one who was not just a friend, but a federal investigator. My wife. She'd been out on assignment, and until now, I hadn't given her the whole story. That evening, I took her through it all, the phony officers, the illegal sign, the threats, and now this new sign. She listened silently, growing more stern in her expression. "You said they impersonated officers?" she asked. "Yeah," I nodded. "Badges, radios, the whole works." Her voice instantly changed. "That's not just harassment," she said. "That's a federal crime." She got up, put on her jacket, and murmured, "Tomorrow morning, we stop this." Next morning, I saw her drive up to the house in her black, unmarked SUV, badge pinned on her belt. The neighbors watched from behind their blinds as she marched directly toward Karen's front lawn. Karen was watering her flowers, acting as though nothing had occurred. "Oh, it isn't the wife of the trespasser," she jeered, "here to beg for mercy." My wife reached slowly into her purse, her voice steady but cutting. "Federal Bureau of Investigation. You're being investigated for impersonation, forgery, and harassment." The garden hose dropped from Karen's fingers. "You're kidding," she breathed. "Do I look like I'm kidding?" my wife replied, closing in on her. "Fake cops followed you to my doorstep. Property records, forged. That isn't leadership, Karen, that's federal fraud." Karen took a step back, wide-eyed, attempting to make light of it all. But no one was laughing with her this time. Neighbors stood at their doors, silently observing as her tidy little universe started to fall apart. For the first time ever, I saw something new in her eyes, fear. Her pretend confidence broke. You can't arrest me," she stuttered. "I know people, important people." My wife didn't bat an eyelash. "Then they can view this video with us at the federal office," she said, raising her phone. The screen displayed everything from the phony officers feigning evicting me to Karen uploading that phony notice to my door. Her hand shook. "Not understanding," she attempted to state, but her eyes roamed in all directions looking for someone to rescue her. At that moment, a county patrol vehicle came onto the block. The same officer who had been there earlier got out and nodded to my wife. "Ma'am, we received your call." In a matter of seconds, Karen had a circle of people around her. The officer read her rights as my wife listed the charges: impersonating law enforcement, property fraud, harassment, and conspiracy. The neighbors whispered, some filming, others just staring in disbelief as the woman who once claimed to run everything was now being handcuffed on her own lawn. As they led her to the car, she twisted her head and shouted, "You think you've won? You'll regret this. Everyone will." My wife crossed her arms. "The only thing I'll regret," she said icily, "is not having caught you earlier." When the car pulled away, the street grew quiet. Even the birds appeared to stop. For the first time since I'd moved in, the air was still quiet, as if the entire neighborhood had been holding its breath and finally exhaled. My wife looked at me and smiled weakly. "You handled this better than most," she whispered. I smiled back. "I just didn't want another fight," I replied. But she opened the wrong door this time. My wife laughed. "Yeah, and she chose the wrong family to play with." 1 week later, everything was different. The false HOA signs vanished, air lighter, neighbors finally speaking again. It turned out Karen had terrorized nearly the entire block, threatening fines, gossiping, even locking one man out of his garage simply to teach him a lesson. But now she was gone, and not just gone, charged. The county affirmed the HOA she purported to run never existed. The doctor documents led to her and a city clerk she had bribed. It was in local headlines: fake HOA leader arrested for fraud and officer impersonation. Neighbors who had previously been avoiding me began dropping by to thank me. "You did what we couldn't," one older gentleman informed me. "You stood up to her." But I hadn't done it by myself. My wife's badge could have ended the battle, but it was the reality that knocked her down. All her lies, all her threats, all of them crumbled the day we declined to yield to her. A few nights later, as the sun set behind the trees, I secured the last screw on my front door, the same one that began it all. My wife rested her weight on the railing of the porch, smiling. "Feeling different now, don't you?" she asked. "Yeah," I answered, closing it securely. "This door is mine." There was silence for a moment until a gentle wind came through, bearing the sound of children playing down the street. Honest laughter, not tense laughter. I gazed out over the neighborhood and softly said, "I didn't fight for this nation just to be informed I'm not allowed to lock my own door." My wife smiled. "And now no one ever shall again." The tale could have ended there, the peace after the tempest, justice finally administered, but it wasn't ever about locks or homes. It was about holding your ground. Because sometimes the most powerful walls are not made of brick or wood, they're made of fact. If you like this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring that bell, because here at Neighbor Wars HQ, the drama never ends, and the truth always prevails. Catch you in the next story.